Patrick Hurley to move the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I'm very pleased to have secured this debate today because employment policy can sometimes feel very abstract in this place. We talk about things like rates and targets and programmes, but for the people that we represent, employment can be intensely personal. It's about confidence, dignity, routine, and feeling that you've got something to contribute. I know all of this from personal experience. The depression that I fell into in the mid-90s at the end of the Tories' last disastrous spell in government, when I couldn't get a job, had a long-lasting effect on my life. Growing up in what was then, and still is by many measures, one of the poorest boroughs in the country, the pressure to find a job, any job to be honest, was immense. But the availability of jobs didn't match that pressure. The local factory had closed down in 1991. My hometown had barely any industry left to speak of, and most of the low-paid temporary jobs I could find were in the next town along, almost a 2-hour walk away for a lad who wanted to work but couldn't afford the bus fare to get to the factory. And that's why I want to make the case today for place-based employment support, support that is rooted in communities, shaped by local need, and delivered by people who understand the realities of the lives that they're working with. In my own Southport constituency, I see it time and time again that the people furthest from the labour market are not those who don't want to work. They're the people who've got things like caring responsibilities, or they've got health issues, they've got gaps in their work history, or for whatever reason, they just can't get a break. In my local authority area alone, this equates to over 26,000 people. And what they need isn't another box-ticking exercise. They need someone who knows their area, knows what the local jobs are, and someone who's got the time to treat them as a person. And that's why I want to put on record my thanks for the work of several of these place-based employment support programmes across the north of England. Firstly, there's the Big Onion in my part of the world in Southport. They do things differently, and that's precisely why they're effective. Their work is rooted in trust. They help people rebuild confidence, develop skills, and in many cases, explore things like self-employment or community enterprise as a route back into work. They don't rush people. Their approach recognises that for many residents, the first step towards employment is simply believing that you've got something to offer. That kind of progress doesn't always show up immediately in headline figures, but it is absolutely essential if we want to make sustainable outcomes for the long term. There's also Zinc. It's a charity based in Buxton, started out as a food bank, but they soon branched out into offering employment support and debt advice once they investigated the drivers of local food bank demand. Their most innovative programme is called Microjobs. It offers small, paid roles tailored to people who are far from the jobs market, often people who've been affected by homelessness or past substance abuse. I will give way.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for giving way. Would he agree that place-based employment schemes are a vital way of converting local strengths into local jobs, and that sector-specific initiatives can and should be tailored to the circumstances of individual constituencies, such as mine in North Down, where there's a particular potential in tourism, hospitality, and in the wider marine and coastal economy?
In amongst a long line of things that place-based employment initiatives can do well, that's one of them. So I thank the member for his interruption. I mentioned this programme called Microjobs. 3/4 of those who are on the microjob subsequently move into part-time or full-time work within 6 months. We've also got the Recruitment Junction, which does work up in the North East, mainly in Newcastle, and they place people with criminal convictions into paid work. They work with local employers to identify skill shortages, and then they identify suitable candidates, who they then meet and help them renew their qualifications, they help them write their CVs, they help them prepare for interviews. So far, they've placed almost 900 people with criminal convictions into paid work with a 66% retention rate. Fewer than 5% of those that they place re-offend, compared to around 24% nationally. And I also want to commend the work of the Transform Lives company. Their model deliberately breaks away from what many people expect employment support to look like. It's welcoming, it's informal, it feels safe, and for many people, many participants on their schemes, that alone is transformative. People who go to the Transform Lives company are supported not just with job search, but also with things like confidence and well-being and life skills. They're listened to rather than lectured at. And as a result, people who would never normally engage with employment services do so willingly. I think that should make us stop and think about how our national system is experienced on the ground.
I thank my old friend for giving way. This is a rather unexpected intervention, except for it reminded me of the Job Plus scheme that has been run on one of our council estates in Leighton, where L&Q have been going out and actively knocking on doors, which we've seen not only the young people that were the target of that assistant coming back into the work environment, but also their parents. Would he agree with me that this is the type of scheme that we need to see extended and see funding continued into the year, so that we can see other people brought back into the working environment?
Indeed. I will promise members that I did not give my honourable friend advance sight of my speech, but I will indeed be coming on to talk about Jobs Plus in due course. It's an amazing system, an amazing scheme. So I've already touched on some of my own experiences as a young man, but I think it's worth going back to it at this point, because I want members to get a sense of being put in the shoes of someone who would have really benefited from one of these schemes had they been running back when I was in my late teens and early 20s. Members will know many families have got funny anecdotes about things that children have said. My family's no different. And perhaps unwisely, I'm going to share the funny anecdote that my family say that I said when I was a child. Because apparently back in about 1982 or something, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I said something amusing to my family, and they teased me about it for years afterwards, as they would. Apparently, I asked my parents one day why they watched the news on the telly. In my childhood brain, this made no sense at all. My mum was a dinner lady. My dad worked nights in the local car factory, about 6 or 7 miles away. But I got it into my head as a little kid that the TV news was only for people who didn't have jobs. And that was obviously not my mum and dad. My mum and dad had jobs. What were they doing watching the TV news? It was only about 20 years later when it dawned on me. In the early 1980s, it wasn't for people who didn't have jobs. TV news felt like it was only about people who didn't have jobs. Because every night on the 6 o'clock news, the headlines were about the unemployment figures, the latest round of layoffs in some critical industry or other, the factory closures, the countless thousands being put on the sick as a way of keeping the official numbers of job seekers off the balance sheet. And I grew up in Knowsley in that context, in a local authority area that had been drawn up in such a way a decade earlier so as to exclude all sixth form provision. This was an area that was being written off. And I was a poorly qualified, unskilled lad in his late teens, living in a town with few opportunities and suffering with my mental health because I couldn't see a way out. By way of contrast, these days my city region is benefiting from the award-winning Cradle to Career scheme. It provides holistic mental health and wellbeing support and a focus on dealing with the underlying causes of youth crime and antisocial behaviour. And just as importantly, it's not just dealing with the metrics of success that make the headlines in the press, but it deals in the testimony of the people whose lives have been turned round. I'll return to my broader point. Many of the approaches I've described echo the work done in recent years on rethinking employment support fundamentally. That work has made a compelling case for a more wraparound employment service, one that links employment with skills and with health, housing and local economic conditions, and it gives frontline staff the flexibility to respond to individual circumstances. We've seen this, as my honourable friend mentioned earlier, through things like Jobs Plus. They've demonstrated that embedding employment support directly within social housing communities can reach people who've been economically inactive for years. Early evidence shows not just people moving into work, but people gaining improvements in their confidence, their well-being, their readiness, their resilience, the things that actually make employment sustainable for people. I'll give way.
Amy Stone.
A very sincere speech, I listened to with great interest. He talks about the confidence of youngsters. One of the great industries which was run down during the Conservative years of rule was the nuclear industry. I believe it will be great one day again. And at Doonray, in my constituency, they have still today an apprenticeship scheme which gives youngsters great confidence for the future. I hope that will be carbon copied for the future by many, many industries as we revive our fortunes of what we're good at in this country.
And I think that pinpoints precisely why place-based schemes are so important, because what's useful and what's necessary for my part of the country is not going to be useful for your own, for his own. And I think that difference can really make a positive impact on local people's lives. So I talk about Jobs Plus and the good things it can do, but despite that evidence, too many of the programmes that I've mentioned today exist in a state of uncertainty. They've got short-term funding, they've got delayed decisions that are forcing the providers to plan for winding down, even when their outcomes are improving. Now, that's not a sensible way to run employment policy, and it risks losing exactly the sort of expertise and relationships that we should be encouraging and that we should be building on. So I say, if we're serious about increasing employment and tackling inactivity, we also need to be serious about how that support that's needed is delivered. Central systems have their place, but they can't do everything. We also need long-term backing for place-based approaches, proper partnership with community organisations, and we need to collectively have the confidence to move away from one-size-fits-all solutions. Over 9 million people of working age are economically inactive in the UK, and long-term sickness is now the single largest driver of inactivity among 16 to 64-year-olds. In Southport and across the country, organisations like the Big Onion and Transform Lives and schemes like Cradle to Career are already doing the work we say we want to see. The question is whether national policy is willing to learn from them and support them properly.
On that point, I thank him for
Johnson.
It's a pleasure, as always, to serve under your chairmanship, Dr Morrison, this afternoon. And I want to start, of course, by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Southport, for securing this debate. As he's rightly pointed out, employment can often get bound up in the numbers and targets and rates. But actually, what we all know is that fundamentally this is about people, and it's about families, and it's about communities and the world of work. Work is a huge part of people's lives, and we should never underestimate how much it matters that we support people into work and help them succeed in their careers. I want to thank all honourable members who have spoken this afternoon in what I think is an excellent debate, talking about the support that their constituents are receiving already in many cases. My honourable friend for Stafford talked about her local employers, but also about the vital role of towns in economic growth and regeneration. And I'm also grateful for my honourable friend for North West Leicestershire, who brings great knowledge in her role on the Select Committee and her experience prior to entering this place, and what she talked about, particularly around the Connect to Work programme, which I'm going to say a little bit more about. and my honourable friend for Wolverhampton North East, who spoke about NEETs, but also spoke about the excellent work going on in her area already. That's supporting individuals rooted in partnership. And at the end, she talked about hope, ambition and action. I think that was a very powerful message. And the honourable lady who speaks for the opposition, I just would gently remind her that there are over 500,000 people entering employment over the course of the last year. So just to remember that. Now, I just want to pay tribute to what my honourable friend said and his commitment to helping his constituents into good work. And it was great to hear him champion some of the excellent work of the Big Onion in Southport, of the Cradle to Career scheme in the Liverpool City region more widely, and of various place-based employment support providers across the north of England. And I was particularly interested in Zinc and their micro jobs and helping people to get then into part-time and then full-time work as well. And my honourable friend, I think, talked with great eloquence about the challenges that he faced growing up in an area where the local factory had closed and where work was really hard to come by. And it totally underlines the fact that where you live is often a big factor in the challenges and the chances before you in life. And those who live in communities like the one that my honourable friend represents, or that I represent in Hull North and Cottingham, will always know best what the barriers and the opportunities are in their local area. And that's why I'm committed to working closely with mayoral strategic authorities, local government, the voluntary and community sector and others to make sure that employment support works for people no matter where they live. I regularly meet with mayors and leaders in local government, as do my officials, to make sure that we are designing employment support that meets the needs of those local communities. In December, I met with the Mayoral Council. Last week, the Minister for Skills and I met with the Local Government Association's Inclusive Growth Committee to hear from local leaders working across England, including those representing towns, on youth employment and the Jobs and Careers Service. And earlier today, I met with the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, and we will continue to listen to and engage with local leaders as we reform employment support. Now, a core strength of the DWP is our network of job centres and work coaches. These are on high streets all around the country with staff who are knowledgeable and passionate about the communities they serve. We've got to make the most of this, which is why we're building a new jobs and careers service that moves away from that one-size-fits-all approach that has been mentioned several times this afternoon. We are instead building a locally responsive service designed to meet the different needs of local labour markets, local people and local employers. We're already testing new elements of this service through our Pathfinder in Wakefield, which I went to see myself before Christmas. And we've also matched up Job Centre Plus boundaries with mayoral strategic authorities to strengthen partnerships between job centres, local government and other local stakeholders. And my honourable friend, the member for Southport, mentioned the efforts to make job centres more human. And I have to say, this isn't the first time that this is, there's been effort put into this. I was reading that in the 1940s, as part of his drive to humanise the employment exchanges that existed then, Ernest Bevin felt it necessary to issue an instruction that staff should say good morning to members of the public when they came into the employment exchange looking for help. So fortunately, I think we are starting from a better point than that today, but we want to make sure that job centres are places that people want to go to get support, not that they shy away from. So we're making sure the new Jobs and Careers Service is less about benefit administration and box ticking, and that it better uses technology so we can free up our work coaches' time to focus on giving people support that's tailored to their needs. In the English Devolution White Paper, we set out, again, the important role of mayors in driving local growth and supporting labour market and skills needs. So let me turn to some of the locally led employment support that we are investing in already. This includes £1 billion through our Connect to Work programme. I recently saw this support in action in Lewisham, where a neurodiverse young man told me how that personalised support that he was receiving from the team was helping him in his work as a swimming teacher. And he's one of 300,000 disabled people or people with health conditions and other complex barriers across England and Wales who will be supporting through Connect to Work by the end of the decade. Mayors and local authorities are being funded via grants to enable delivery of local Connect to Work programmes. Over 2/5 of delivery areas are now up and running, and we have given areas considerable flexibility in how they deliver this service, reflecting both local priorities and the other support available in the area. We're also expanding Workwell across England, the whole of England, over the next 3 years to support up to 250,000 people. And I visited Workwell in Cambridge a few months ago and saw the brilliant way that they are working together with local authorities, integrated care boards and Job Centre Plus to provide a single route to personalised integrated work and health support. This recognises that local areas are well placed to knit together local services, and it's for that reason that we've also commissioned local Get Working Britain plans in all areas of England. I just wanted at this point to say the Liberal Democrat spokesperson raised the issue of access to work, and I heard what he said. He will know there was an NAO report produced at the end of last week. Demand has soared for access to work. We are already putting additional staff in, and we're looking at what more can be done because we recognise how important access to work is. I also just wanted to mention about the voluntary and community sector, because that was raised by a number of members this afternoon, and how important their role is in employment support. With the mayoral strategic authorities, we're working closely with this sector to deliver 17 economic inactivity and youth guarantee trailblazers. And we set up those to test new innovative support ways of delivering that support, delivered by local partners. And the partnership is about engaging with communities at that grassroots level to help them access holistic support to move towards work. And I heard the calls this afternoon for the funding to be made available to that particular sector on a sustainable basis with multi-year settlements. And I just wanted to say again, there was mention about local authority funding. The local government finance settlement is the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government's most significant move yet to make English local government more sustainable. The government is making good on long overdue promises to fundamentally update the way we fund local authorities. We are delivering fairer funding, targeting money where it's needed most through the first multi-year settlement in decades. My honourable friend, the member for Southport, spoke about the long-lasting effect on his life when he couldn't get a job as a young man. And I want to just comment on young people. For so many, the consequences of what happens at the start of your working life can cascade then down the years. And that is why we're putting a real focus into supporting young people, not least through our youth guarantee. And at the budget, we announced expansion of the Youth Guarantee backed by £820 million worth of investment. And that goes to the Honourable Gentleman for Birmingham Periborough and his question about supporting young people into infrastructure projects. This investment will create around 300,000 more opportunities to gain workplace experience and training for young people. But I also just wanted to take issue with the Honourable Gentleman for his comments where I think he failed to acknowledge that if support and help is offered to a young person, which it will be through the Youth Guarantee, that there is also a responsibility on the young person to take up that offer of assistance and support and that opportunity. And I think that is part of the social contract in this country. I've also mentioned already the locally led trailblazers, but there's also for young people the expansion of youth hubs to more than 360 areas across Great Britain. And this is important because these are helping us to reach young people where they are, in places such as football clubs and other sports facilities. My honourable friend mentioned the importance of delivering support in familiar settings, and I'm glad he highlighted, and several other members did too, about Jobs Plus, which delivers community-based employment support through the social housing sector. As an example of that, it's being piloted in 10 sites across England. And I also just want to finally mention the Milburn Review, which is looking at why we do have nearly 1 million young people who are not in education, employment or training. It's due to report in the summer, because we cannot allow that waste of talent at nearly 1 million young people. It's not good for those young people, and it's not good for our economy or for the taxpayer either. So in closing, whether it's our Trailblazers, youth hubs, job centre reform or programmes like Connect to Work and Work Well, we are determined that people get the support that suits them, regardless of where they live or what their circumstances are. People's lives are complex and they can face all sorts of barriers to work, whether it's health, skills, transport, housing and much more. That's why an ecosystem of support, which is locally tailored, can ensure that no one is left behind. This requires a joined-up approach where people can access offers of support that they trust and that treat them as an individual and as a whole person. And that is why the government has committed to learn from place-based support, such as the Economic Inactivity and Youth Guarantee Trailblazers, and Connect to Work, and it's why we're committed to truly embedding and tailoring our new Jobs and Careers Service to meet the needs of local people and employers. As we develop our Jobs and Careers Service, our Youth Guarantee and Pathways to Work, we will be working closely with local government, including mayoral strategic authorities, to ensure that these reflect the communities that they serve. Ensuring employment support is integrated in and meets the needs of local communities will help people to benefit from the purpose, pride and independence of good work and to fulfil their potential.